welcome you to the 2019 edition of the Human Resource Expo Africa HREA Summit. This year's theme is the art of employee.
I'm somewhat biased to the HR profession because I do find it to be quite valuable and maybe undervalued in certain circles in the market here. So I'm a big proponent of supporting and collaborating with HR professionals. My first hire, when I was given the responsibility to hire, was an HR person, and she's in the room. Ajoke Bariwa, she's right there, and it was probably my best decision ever. So I'm a huge fan, and I'm honored to be here. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Tola Obi.
Hi, everyone. As Tola said, I run Yellow Brick Road, and we are kind of playing the same space, and it's nice to see us sitting on the same side of the divide for once. And like she said, we'd like to make this as interactive as possible. But I was actually hoping to get something out of this as opposed to impart knowledge. And I know the topic is refers to how do you retain, I believe was the word they said, creative talent. I actually have a much bigger problem, which is how do you actually acquire, how do you find creative talent in a country like Nigeria? Just like Tola, I've run my organization for about 10 to 12 years, and it's a constant struggle on a day-to-day basis to find the right talent. And obviously that's attributable, in my opinion, to a number of reasons. Firstly, I am of the belief that we don't have the right infrastructure, for example, and it doesn't lend or support the development of the nurturing of creative talent. So, for example, if you meet most people in other parts of the world who work in the creative space, you'll find that even through their education as well, they've been educated. They've gone to schools of advertising, schools of technology, schools of et cetera, to hone their craft. We find that that's not the case in Nigeria. I actually asked most of the guys in my office yesterday how many of them had actually studied advertising as a degree or as a course in university, and none of them had. So trying to find the talent itself is a big challenge. The other challenge is that is the issue of I don't know how many, actually just as a quick survey, how many actual HR consultants do we have in the room today? Are there any? Just the one? Or HR practitioners? Well, no, consultants, not practitioners, consultants. Do you have any HR consultants in the room? Just the one? Okay. Do you specialize in the recruitment of creative talent, or you're just a broad-based recruitment consultant? You hire anybody from sorry? It's been difficult. So the other challenge we have is that we don't have HR consultants that specialize in the recruitment of creative talent. So, and it takes a kind of special kind of HR person to understand what we look for in creative talent. So when I call an HR person, for example, and I say I'm looking for a good copywriter, first I have to explain what I mean by that so they can go and find it for me. The third challenge we have is, and I think that's something that sort of cuts across all industry in Nigeria, is a lot of us feel that because we have the talent means that we have the skill. And they're two different things. I'm having a talent, I'm having a skill are two different things. So for example, just because you have a nice voice, like me, just because you have a nice voice doesn't make you a good voiceover artist, for example. And a lot of people think, oh, I've got a nice voice, so I want to be a voiceover artist, or I can draw and I want to be an art director. And so you have a lot of people coming through who have the tools but haven't honed the craft, and that eventually becomes a problem. So these are some challenges I think we face in the industry that makes it very difficult for us to find the right talent, let alone maintain them. So I'd like to open with that. And like you said, I'm open to any questions. We are open. So Tola is open to any questions that you want to ask, and I'll just kind of say yes and no and 3 bags full to whatever she says. So yeah.
All right. So yes, we've listened to opening remarks from our panelists, and they play in the marketing, communications, and advertising space. So yes, that is the area from which they'll be speaking. That will be their area of strength. And remember, we're looking at a fine mix of technology and advertising. So yes, for the most part, they work with creatives and tech talents. So quick one. since we're speaking to HR professionals, at least for the sake of argument, what are the qualities, what are the attributes that they should look out for in trying to hire creatives? He's trying to be a gentleman.
So it's funny because she actually just asked me that question just now before we came up. So I have an answer prepared for you already.
Great.
Again, it goes back to like I said, it's one thing to be creative, and it's another thing to be professional. It's also another thing to understand the job that you're recruited to do. And we sometimes find that we get people who come through. Yes, they're very creative, but can they function in a work environment? And it's the ability of our HR person to be able to assess their ability to function or co-create or co-work in a work environment. Because a lot of creative people sort of work in their own head, and they've got the answer in their own head. But when it comes to co-creation, working as a group or working as a team member, which is what, especially in advertising industries, what the job requires, it becomes quite difficult. How do you get people of different personalities to sit down in a room and create magic, as we like to call it? So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge we have that we like our HR people to look out for is there's also the issue of aptitude. So yes, you understand how to paint, but if I give you instructions, are you able to understand those instructions? Are you able to interpret those instructions? And are you able to obviously work on those instructions? Okay, instructions is the wrong word because it sounds like I'm telling you what to do, which I understand creatives don't like to be told. So if I give you a brief, I think that's a word, a brief to say, can we do this? It's the ability to understand that brief, because what we need to understand is that even though we work in the creative industry, time is still money. And the longer it takes us to create or develop work, the more expensive it becomes. So your ability to be able to understand and digest a brief as quickly as possible is paramount to us, people who sign checks.
Okay, thank you very much, Kaliko. Tola, you want to add your voice to that?
I feel like he's done justice to the question already. Maybe a different approach to it would be around the practitioners. What I found with many consultants, HR people, is our space isn't necessarily that interesting to them. So they have very little exposure to it. And so, as he said earlier, when you're trying to recruit for a role, you have to explain the basics, So I guess I'm curious on the other side, like, is there a reason why you guys find our industry to be less interesting? And so there's not that much like investment from you guys, or is it maybe we're just not talking to the right people? So if anyone wants to chime in on that, that'd be useful.
Okay, thank you. So they do a lot of advertising, branding for organizations, PR, that's public relations, and of course, event activations. Pretty much so.
And digital media as well.
Yes, exactly. Digital media, because that's the aspect that directly addresses technology. Yes. So they do a lot of digital media too. So that just gives you some background as to what they do when they just talk about marketing communications. Yeah, pretty much. So any thoughts from the floor? Any thoughts from the audience? Any questions at all? Any areas you'd want us to address? Okay, so we'll just move the mic around a little bit and ensure that all questions are asked and answers provided.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda. I have a question, and it's from the technology perspective. I work for a technology company. So the major challenge I've had is engaging the tech talents, having them stay for a longer time. So I have situations where we get them hired, they start off. We've created flexi working hours for them. We've created good work environment for them. But most times they come up and say, I want to do my own project. I want to have time off. And this happens maybe 6 months into, and they feel, okay, after 3 months, I can come back and continue with your work. So what are those things that we as HR professionals can do to retain our tech talents? I hear flexi working hours, and some organizations are already doing that. I hear flexi workspace for tech guys. And so to an extent, other people in the organization will start feeling like, okay, we keep changing because of this tech talents. And sometimes they feel excluded. But what should we do from a technology perspective? What can we do to make it better so that they can stay longer with us?
Kaliko and Tola, should we take all the questions in one fell swoop or just respond to them? Okay. So
I would maybe zoom back a little. The thing about these sort of perks is that they are very very tactical in that they solve one problem, but they don't address the actual situation. So tech talent, similar to creative talent, they are very fluid, which means, if for instance you're bored and you go on Instagram, I don't know how much you use it, but if you go on Instagram, increasingly what you find is multi-hyphenate people, writer, photographer, model, hairstylist. They also might have day jobs, but they are not necessarily looking for a digital to keep them. So I would say, first of all, zoom out. Who are you actually hiring, right? How are you weeding out those that are looking for a paycheck that gets them to their next project? And how are you finding people that see purpose in the work that they're coming to do at your organization? So the thing about tech is that because my skill is valuable to many, many people, both people that are physically here and people that are, abroad, the temptation is to keep looking for purpose or keep looking for that immediate satisfaction or gratification. Now, to hold on to them for long term, and long term might be 3 to 5 years, so we're no longer a generation of 10, 15, and you don't even want that necessarily speaking. I think on average, if you have a turnover of between 2 to 3, 3 to 5, you're in a good place in terms of investment and like keeping your revolving door going. You have to answer the question of, do they see the purpose that you are trying to achieve within your organization? And if they do not, you probably should not be hiring them to start off with, because your perks would only go so far. Your perks will be good until the next temptation arrives. So I would recommend, review your shortlisting, review your questions that you're asking, because you want to ask pointed enough questions to where you can guesstimate that they see the value in the purpose that you're driving at. And the purpose can be money. It has to be a great ambition. Are you changing the world? That's the words they use. So all of these people, they look to Silicon Valley as their model for the lives they want. And so far, there's no Amazon or Facebook or Twitter in Nigeria, but you have small ripples of them. Paystack, they're kind of doing interesting things. There's another money-based one. Paystack is probably the most interesting one. These guys that do money as well. Sorry?
Carry rice.
I've heard of them. I've heard of them. Rice. I've heard of them. There's one they do. Piggyback. Those guys. Yeah, Paystack. FinTech is probably the most interesting space that you can consider here. So, and if you notice, well, I have friends that work in a few of them. They tend to stay for a long time, and they don't stay because they give them loads of perks. You get a subsidy on your housing if you live around the office, for instance. You get really good, generous pay and vacation time. But they're not there for those things. They're there because they see the purpose, like they see the blue skies. So I would say dial back to that first place and then figure out those that actually deserve those perks, because the perks is not your answer.
Just to add to that, and I'm not sure whether this cuts across all the tech companies, but the few ones I've been to, I often am shocked at the environment that these guys create for these guys to work in. I've been to a few of these tech companies, and they're all crammed into one room, all sitting around a desk, and there's 10 of them, and they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing. And our guy is sitting in one big air-conditioned office, for a few feet away, overseeing them. And that's not an enabling environment for people who work in tech and creative. So I think also let's try and review them. And the second thing I'd say is, just like I think it's Facebook that allows all their employees to do their own thing, and as long as the only problem in Nigeria is that Nigerians, we call it PP, which means they're doing their own thing, but they're competing with you directly. So, and offering what you do to their friends at a cheaper rate, which is not acceptable, by the way. Doing your own thing means, come on, find your passion, do whatever you have to do. But when you're working for somebody, I think it's not right for you to be offering the same services to the public that your employer is at a lower rate.
Okay. My name is Olowole. I'm a recruitment consultant, and I've actually recruited a lot for companies in the creative space, a lot of them recently. And I usually have discussions with most of my clients to find out what their challenges are. And most of the challenges borders on engagement majorly, and not really finding the talent is basically like just like you said earlier, the talent is there, the skill can be trained. So finding that it's not the challenge for them, is keeping them long. And most of from my conversation, I've actually come to the conclusion that you don't necessarily have to keep the talent for longer periods, because I think as HR professionals, we've actually come to the realization in our head that there's a stereotype that we have to actually keep talent for a very long period, and that's when we are engaging them, and that's when we are actually getting value from them. I was having this conversation with Shakil yesterday, and he said something. He said sometimes we look at something as a problem to us, but not everything we see as a problem is actually a problem. Sometimes it's a blessing to us. And it was particularly mentioned looking at turnover rates. What does it apply in your industries? If you're in a creative space, for instance, usually you would like to freshen up your talent time and again. You want them to go and come back because you want to bring enthusiasm, you want to bring vigor and renewed energy into that space. So if you're keeping your talent for longer periods, more than 5 years, 10 years, they become redundant and they are getting bored, they are getting writer's blocks and different kind of issues, psychological issues that they would probably get. So he was saying that if you are hiring and the average percentage in your industry is above 10%, and you're telling yourself you've reduced it below 10%, it means you're creating a problem that was never there for yourself. So naturally, you should not look at, oh, you've actually created a space, you have actually solved the problem, but actually you have actually created a bigger problem for yourself. So what I say is, when you're recruiting creatives, I think you've mentioned it, is that we can't be stereotyped in what we are looking at and what we are giving to them. The creative space is a very peculiar kind of industry, and there are different kind of perks you could bring. You have to actually understand your kind of business, understand the kind of talents you are managing, to be able to create the kind of environment that suits the talent you're working with. I think that's my submission on it.
Okay, that sounds pretty much like a contribution, right? Okay, so any other comments, questions? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I want to refer to what you said when you were giving your keynote. You mentioned about giving the HR consultants the specified qualification you want, and I have an experience on that. Our clients will give us, this is what I want in the next employee, and when we get, they can't pay. You know, it's so rare to get that kind. You know, they have specifications that even you want that do people really have this kind of quality, except you go for training and that. And when you realize that they don't want to pay. And at the end of the day, this person leaves. You get the kind of person that wants to pay. And you feel, but my own recommendation is that if you don't want to pay someone with a talent and has the skill, you should be able to, spend cash on trainings. So it's either you pick the two, you are able to pay that guy who is talented and has all your highlighted requirements, or you train the ones you have to be to upgrade to that level, or you train the ones coming in. And thank God for graduate training programs. And I think that's one of the, but if you want something urgently, I think you should be able to pay for it.
Okay, there's some agreement from the panel. We still have more contributions or questions, as the case may be, on the floor.
I think so. So my name is Bethel. Good morning, and I work for General Electric as the HR director. So I think my contribution is, I agree. So you asked a question about kind of why HR professionals are not as interested in the tech space or creative space. And I think it's twofold. I think one, in this market, in SSA, whatever, Sub-Saharan Africa, it's not as mature, so to speak, right? So typically the organizations that you see that are playing in the space are kind of smaller, mom and pop, right? And so therefore the training, ground that an HR professional would ordinarily have by working with a Facebook or Silicon Valley companies that platform doesn't exist. So you probably have to bring somebody in and train them all the way up, right? But I think the key differentiator, how you can build that type of HR professional, as you have this young lady in your organization, is making sure that they have a seat at the table and are participating in your operating rhythm as though they're not an HR professional, right? Because that's how you're actually going to probably contribute to building the industry of HR professionals that can serve the type of clients or, companies like yours. I think one is just, you may have to be part of the building of that foundation because those opportunities are few and far between on this side of the world, right? I think that's the first thing. And the second thing, I agree with your statement around perks. That's like in my opinion, the old school thing to do. But I think the future of work is fundamentally different. The approach that flexible work and creative workspaces are great, but it's definitely a thing of maybe 10 years ago. I mean, today, I think it's really about the fact accepting that people don't want to work for one dedicated employer. They want to have short-term contracts. They want to have the flexibility to work for you, for me, and for her, right? And then what controls can you put in place in your organization to protect yourself from conflict of interest or things like that? So I think the challenge is on us HR professionals to be a little bit more creative around how we structure work and moving away from the things that we believe are the things that creatives want, which is like work-life balance. I mean, I don't think that's very forward thinking. So that's just my 2 cents. Or 3.
Okay. That seems like a lot of work for HR professionals. HR professionals need to have a firm grip of most subject areas.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so it's also in relation to what he said about the quality of education and background for most of the talent that are available. So I think it's high time that business owners in that space come together to invest in creating, a system that can help to build the kind of talent, that we need. And then I think it's already happening in some in some countries. I know South Africa, they invest in a system that helps to churn out, very good, very qualified talents that we have to pay quality money for if we want. So Nigeria now has a high percentage of people who are willing to operate in that space, irrespective of how they want to operate, whether it's on flexi or full-time or whatever, but what we are concerned about is, the quality that they have. So business owners should consider, coming together to agree on how to invest, because it's all going to come back to you at the end of the day. Thank you.
All right. So at this point, I would like to throw it back to the panelists. Or do we have any other questions or contributions? Okay, let me take yours then. Ask them a question.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Choma. I'm sure I'm different from most people here. I am a risk manager. And coming here and, looking at the environment that we currently operate in, it is a very tech-savvy environment. I think it's important for every business owner and HR manager and maybe top-level management to also know a lot more about this whole tech activities and what the tech guys do, like have an understanding. Because I feel that the tech guys, because of the uniqueness of their profession, they kind of have a power that they use to, dictate what should be going on in any environment that they play in or in any organization that they work in. I think it's important that every business owner, they should not shy away from this thing, because most business owners, or, apart from the new CEOs that we have now, but most ones are not very tech savvy kind of people. So I think they shouldn't shy away from it. They should get themselves involved and get to know what really what's all these things are, and get to understand what they really do, so that when they meet these guys and they via their interaction, they see that, oh, the person that you're coming to work for as well also has knowledge in this field. So they don't, have that authority and so much power and to dictate whatever.
Okay, so thank you for that contribution. Okay, you have a question? All right, let's take that question.
Okay. My question is, I work in the aviation industry. So yes, the whole world is going techy now, but we're sort of limited. I'm in the private sector to what we can do. And because I work with, under the group, we get thrown all these new profiles, new platforms. So my question and the reason why I joined this class is how to get my grass level, junior level subordinate or employee to be more creative. What can they do? I mean, I can't go about organizing pageants in the office. We can't do that. What can I introduce? What fresh insights can I bring in to my company? Okay, not necessarily, like you said, what you do, because some organizations now, we have the PR department, we have the media, they get thrown for us to type a letter. I have to send, an email, and then someone sends a press release, things like that. I want something that I can do in-house with my team and say, this is what I want you guys to use to develop yourself and bring out content. And we can share it in-house and, just keep developing as a team.
Okay, I think Kaliko, you should go first.
That's okay. So for me, that's a tough one because, like I said, I kind of I run an advertising agency. So how do I fuse that with what you do? All I can do is tell you what we do in my agency to kind of get sort of people stimulated and sort of be able to develop, and think creatively. And I think she made the point that we're quite a few steps behind as far as the rest of the world is concerned. And one thing I do find interesting is that we're able to get case studies or, little projects and things that have been done elsewhere. And just something I usually do in the office is I sit down with my guys, show them a piece of work and ask them to try and understand what the brief from the client was. And that gets you to start to think from the solution backwards. Because a lot of the things that we see that when I show it to my guys, like our clients would never buy that here. That's what never happened here. That would never work here. But we have to obviously customize the creative and the work that we develop for the environment that we live in. So I would suggest that could be one way that you do it. And I'm sure Tola has a few more greater ideas.
Are you willing to pay me? So I think creativity, we make it sound like this, special skill. Everybody is creative. I think there'll be, again, I know nothing about aviation beyond I on board, and I hopefully get to my destination, No, deplane. That's the word. What's the word? Is that the word? Disembark, yes. Whatever the word is. No, I said on board. But I do understand the need to engage, and I don't think that is unique to us or, techie people like that. I think maybe what you can find is, what are the things within your groups or your teams that are unique? Figure out maybe games, exercises that you can design. Again, to his point, look for case studies of people that have done it before, because there would be interesting things that you can gamify within your space, within your teams. But I think stay within your area of expertise, because if you try and transplant something from a different industry, it might not be as productive for you. So the work really is for you to try and figure out how can you gamify your
But there are actually companies who do that as well.
Yeah,
so I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about guys who will come in, run a workshop for you, like half a day. There's all kind of problem solving and challenges and tasks that they put to the table, then allows you and gets your guys to think creatively as well. So if you see me out, I'm joking, but I'm quite happy to give you that information if you want. But there are companies who do that. We had a workshop last year or the year before last, and we got a guy who came in, they're most like management consultants, but more from a creative space, and they sit down and there's all kinds of tasks that they set and get your team to be able to work as a group and also to think creatively as well.
If you're willing to invest, 100, 200K, we did a session at Upbeat This was last year, and she came up with all the games. It was a hella good time. They were like simple problem solving games, like stacking of cups, or there was one where I had to go to the wall and draw, but I had to take instruction from people behind who were saying absolute nonsense. So yeah, there are things, and you don't have to go if upbeat is not within your budget. You can do it in your office, So there are things you can do. I wanted to respond to a comment that came from the risk. She's the risk lady. Yeah, I forget her name now. Yes, is that her name, Chema? Okay. Hi, Chema. I wanted to just make a comment to your comment. I do think it's valuable for us to all understand our areas of operation. So, for instance, I do not write and I have no intention of learning how to draw. I have tried. However, it might be important for you to trust your team members, because what you described sounded like an environment that has very little trust. Now, I understand that you're a risk professional, so by default, you don't trust anything or anyone. But I think it's dangerous, or the premise might be a bit dangerous if you go in never expecting or always expecting people to hold one over you, or they can outsmart you. Tech guys are very creative. They work with code. I will never learn JavaScript. I barely got through calculus, so it's just not going to happen. But I would only be comfortable to work with somebody that I know will not lead me into the dark. Like I because I do not know what I know what I do not know, and what I do not want to know, I will pay somebody else to do it and trust them to do it. So, I would recommend, a bit of trust is important. Just speak the language, understand the problem, empathize with them when they're struggling, but you have to trust your team members. It's really important.
All right, thank you. So, last thought from our panelists. If it were to be a place to put together like 3 rules to engage employees in the creative and tech space, what would you say? 3. Your top 3. Going forward, new rules to engage employees in the creative and tech space. Top 3. And we'll wrap up this session with that.
So, I'm sorry, the lady was saying that flexi time, that kind of stuff is like so 10 years ago. I agree. But actually in a country like Nigeria, it's so difficult to implement, because the whole idea of flexi time starts with the premise that you trust the people that you work with to be able to do what they have to do. And it's been my challenge this year, because the other day, we've been, sorry, I just have to give this off my chest. We've been talking about, why do people always come late to work? And the other day I sat down and I thought, and I said, hang on, we work till 11 o'clock at night sometimes. It's unfair for me to expect people to come to work at 8 a.m. the next morning. So let's start to think like a 21st century agency, like you said, and try and introduce the idea of flexi time. But I can't, because I know it will be abused. And that's a challenge I have. So oftentimes we know the answers to the problems that we have, but it's trying to implement those solutions and implement them successfully that becomes a challenge. So to answer your question, for example, I feel that flexi working time is, I don't know, do you guys do flexi working?
We do. But we do, so, okay, it's a very special one. Basically, you can take a day off if you want to. We don't expect you to do anything. However, if you request a day off, but you have work to do, you have to do that work. And what we found is that they comply about 90% of the time. But it's a very small team that we're experimenting with. Eventually, what my ambition, and Ajoke is smiling here, but my ambition is to go to a 4-day working week. And the reason for that is, I don't think I need to be in the office every day of the week. Let me tell you why. You go out, you spend 3 hours in traffic, or your lunch overruns by an hour. When you're done with your work week, there's actually a full 8 to 9 hours that are wasted. If so facto, why am I in the office Monday to Friday? So, but this is in my head. We've bantered about it. I do think that you should consider it, because I think you'd have happier employees, because working in Lagos is a disaster for most people. We've tried it. And then we don't sign in anymore because, the team Ajoke runs, we don't sign in anymore because we found that these are adults. Like, why? When you come, We don't.
The other thing I find that's worked for us is the idea of, and again, something that's practiced very freely elsewhere in the world, is the whole idea of having a flat structure. That really works for us. It's very difficult to expect people to be creative. They're calling you sir all the time, you know. And so in my agency, we're all on a first name basis. And I think that works. So it's something I would encourage a lot of people to do. I can't think of a thing. Another thought.
How come no one has talked about dress code, relaxing the dress code?
Other than that.
It's a given. Yeah, it's a given. Yeah.
Although sometimes, again, they take advantage, you know. Yeah. You can't come to work wearing a t-shirt that says I'm on a codeine diet, for example. Not acceptable.
Not if you have client meetings.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have 3. I have many fantasies. Plenty.
Your top 3.
My top 3.
So wrap up with that.
Okay, so my top 3 is to pay well, which means
Okay.
pay better than I am paying now.
Okay.
Which means the other side needs to get better. So that's a different problem.
True,
But
true.
the first thing is to pay better.
Mm-hmm.
So both. I would say both. No, they're not. But so the reason why I say living in Lagos, there's certain pays that just don't make sense. Like, you know, if you're paying a driver 60K, he's going to steal your petrol money. Like, living in Lagos, you know, they are creative. They give you invoices or receipts that they fabricated with the, like, you know. So
That's the other side of creative, right?
yes, it's the other side, but it does happen. But I understand your question, and I don't think it's both, but in different weights. So I would say different structures. I do think bonuses and stuff like that. I envy people that work in management consulting, because like halfway through the year they get these mad bonuses that are like equivalent to their annual base. Like how? So fantasy. Second fantasy would be to hire for talent, not hire for pressure. You know, because a lot of times when we're hiring because it's a new account, and you know, so the math in my head is that once you get to 3 accounts, to 3 businesses, 3 brands, you've hit your ceiling for errors.
Okay.
Once you go past 3, and I'm sure people that are in other agencies might have this codified, but I don't know if is that same for you. Do you have it codified when you get to 3? Does error rates just go up? Okay, so that's my assessment. That for us, anyway, once you get to 3 businesses, you just have to make way more mistakes than you would if you were at 3. But what I would like to do is to be able to predict that flow, so we're not hiring, you know, because when you hire under pressure, you make hiring error sometimes. So I would like to minimize that. And then my third fantasy would be to copy Netflix's culture. So I would encourage people in this room to look up Netflix, because their culture deck is free. You can go on their, I think it's like jobs.netflix.com/careers. I remember this because I sent it out recently, and I realized more people should know about it. It's unfortunate that I have to use an American example, but there are not very many Nigerian organizations that I envy or that I would want to be like, for now anyway. But I think if you spend time looking at it, you will understand where we sort of need to be in terms of how we treat people, how we treat our colleagues, you know, the value systems that I think are important, which is trust, collaboration, dedication, you know, those sort of things. Netflix is integrity is a huge one. Most people know Netflix in the world. Many of their customers don't leave. They've built a product that nobody thought was going to work, but they made work, and just through pure ingenious dedication to a mission. So that would be my third thing. How much of Netflix can I become in this market? Because I'm not going anywhere.
All right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for our panelists. CEO, Center Spread Great Tola, the co-founder and CEO, Yellow Brick Road, Kaliko, Olowole. It's been an interesting conversation. And of course, we've had contributions from the floor. Thank you very much. This session is over.